the Tuesday, July 23rd, 2019 public hearing for the City of Tampa's Barrio Latino Commission to order. Welcome, everyone. I'm John Thompson, Chair of the Commission. If you're here to present a project, you will have limited time to make your presentation, so we suggest being thorough but concise. When coming to the microphone, you will need to identify yourself and your relationship to the project. The Commissioners will not ask any questions during your presentation. Your project should be presented in the following order: site plan, elevations, architectural details, wall sections. Staff presents staff report. We will then ask for public comment. Following your presentation, the Commissioners will be asking questions in the same order as the presentation. Please state and spell your name clearly. If you are here to speak for or against the project, your time will be limited to 3 minutes. So take some time now to summarize your comments, because 3 minutes goes by very quickly. Following public comment, the applicant will have 5 minutes for rebuttal. The public hearing will then be closed. The only comments which will be allowed after the public hearing is closed will be in response to any questions from the Commissioners. The Commissioners will then discuss the case and will make their decision based on the City Ordinance, Chapter 27 of City Zoning Code, the design guidelines, the Secretary of Interior standards, design review comments, and the testimony given at the public hearing. The BLC can only act on items that are within our specific jurisdictional responsibility. Owner agents are independently responsible to obtain any appropriate permits and/or approvals. If you haven't already done so, please silence your cell phones. And I'd like to introduce Commissioners starting at my left.
Good morning, I'm Lee Ving Nguyen.
Good morning, I'm Eric Schiller.
Good morning, Jose Gelatz.
And we have with us Dennis Fernandez, Ron Vila, Beverly Jusak, and legal Jared Simpson. We have on the agenda the reading of the minutes from the June 25th, 2019 meeting. Do we have a motion regarding these minutes?
So moved.
Seconded.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any comment? None? All in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Okay. Meeting minutes are passed. Announcements.
Good morning, Commissioners. Dennis Fernandez, Architecture Review and Historic Preservation Manager. Just a brief announcement. We will be holding a special public hearing on August 6, 2019 at 9 a.m. to hear case BLC 1982. That will be one of the cases that you'll deal with in your continuations. I believe all available members have confirmed their ability to attend that public hearing. Please let us know if anything changes on that. Also, I have the June 2019 BLC staff reviews to place into the record. We have had one case that was originally supposed to be heard this morning, but has decided to continue, so Ron will be adding that to his list of continuations, and he'll come up now and present those to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Ron Vila. I'm staff with Historic Preservation. Moving to continuations, I'd like to take the one that is being continued to the August 6, 2019 first. We're going to need separate motions for these. So the first continuation that's reflected on the agenda is BLC 19-82 for the address of 1531 East 7th Avenue, and that's being continued to the special public hearing that's being held on August 6, 2019. And if I could get a motion for that, please.
So moved.
We need a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And then the remaining continuations, that there's 3 that are reflected on the agenda, and then the last one I'll discuss with you in more detail. The first one is BLC T, which indicates this is coming in for a tax ad valorem exemption, 19-04 for the address of 2105 North Nebraska Avenue. That's being requested by the agent to be continued to the August 27, 2019 public hearing. The next continuation is BLC 19-60 for 1707 East Columbus Drive, and that is also being continued to the August 27, 2019 public hearing. And the third one reflected on today's agenda is BLC 19-97 for the address of 2309 East 3rd Avenue, and that's being continued to the August 27, 2019 public hearing as well. The one that is not reflected on the agenda is BLC 19-81 for the address of 1607 East 6th Avenue. The agent was here, and then after going through his items, he was supposed to get some last minute information that did not come, and staff felt that it wasn't adequate to be presented today. So he's in agreement to be continued to August 27, 2019 as well. So I need one motion for all of those continuations, please.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Continuation's granted.
Thank you very much. Now, under conflicts of interest and ex parte communication, if any commissioners have discussion on the one item that's reflected on the agenda today, they may do so. Put that on the record at this time. Seeing and hearing none, we'll move to the swear-in. Everybody that wishes to testify, including staff, please stand up and raise your right hand. I do. Moving to the first case, which is BLC 19-64. This is for the address of 1602 East 4th Avenue. There is a primary structure on the site. It is a non-contributing structure. It was constructed approximately in 1973. The zoning classification is YC7. This is for an accessory use to the primary structure, and there's approximately 320 square feet of storage. Past action, this case was in front of you last month. It was continued. There was additional information that was requested by the commissioners at that time. On page 3 of your staff report, I've separated the conditions that staff have, and then under the staff's conditions, it was the discussion that the commissioners had at the prior hearing, and there's 4 bullet items attached that the agent will go through at this time after the photo presentation. As always, I like to start with a Sanborn map. It shows you the fabric of the district in 1929. The property in question is at the corner of 4th Avenue that runs east and west, and 16th Street that runs north and south. There's an alley to the rear of the property, to the north of the property, and you see the historic structures that were there in 1929. This is a current overhead. Property in question, once again, we're on 4th Avenue. It runs east and west, and 16th Street that runs north and south. There's the alley that's still open but unimproved. There is a commercial building here, the one that was constructed in 1973 that I spoke about. Then they have a parking area to the east, and they have some parking that surrounds the non-contributing structure. And the storage unit will be in the empty parcel just to the east of the primary structure. This is the primary structure. This is 4th Avenue in the foreground. It shows the parking surrounding the property. This is the south elevation. This is moving to the east elevation. And surrounding the property, this is to the west. This is down 16th Street, and that's that elevation. Moving to the vehicular access into the property. The non-contributing structure is over here on the left. This is the access into the parking. You see part of the storage shed that is already here, and it's encompassed by a wooden fence. This is looking at the subject site. This is non-contributing buildings, multifamily to the east. This is the empty parcel. This is the fence that kind of mitigates the storage structure, and this is how it sits today. Looking at the surrounding properties, this is also at the corner of 4th Avenue and 16th Street. This is the northwest corner. Directly across the street, 4th Avenue to the south. You have some parallel parking that flanks 4th Avenue, and then you have a perimeter wooden fence that's painted white across the street as well. This is a street shot indicating the ample parking that 4th Avenue has. It's a wide street. It's a state street. Then you see some of the fabric here. New construction that was approved by the board. Multifamily new construction that was approved by the board here, approved by this board. And then you have one historic structure, and that's looking to the east. And then the last photo that I have is looking to the west, once again down 4th Avenue. This is 16th Street that bisects it, and you see some non-contributing structures that flank the corner there as well. At this time, I'll have the agent come forward and do the presentation. Thank you.
My name is Henry Humbert. I'm the agent representing the property owner. Last name is Humbert. This is part of a continuance from last month. We were asked to make some corrections and revisions to our proposed improvements to the structure. Namely, there was a pitch roof that was much shallower than we have shown now. I think we were on a 4-on-12, now we're showing a 10-on-12, which is more in line with the adjacent properties, our next door neighbors. Also, we went through and showed, updated the corrugated siding, which would be reflected from the base of the structure all the way to the top. Before we had a ridge line where we were just going to paint below the existing container and then just put siding on the upper. But the suggestion was that it be continuous, so we've made those corrections. We've reflected the new details. We are going to paint it to match our existing structure and with the colors that are matching. And I think primarily that was the extent of the improvements that we were requested to make at that time. I did pick up some, well, I was unable to get actual details. Which way, this way, that way? Actual physical details, but we did go out and look at actual materials that we could use for the siding. And this is just one sample or one exhibit of the type of material, both rolled and for the roofing, for the siding. So we've undertook that effort to go ahead and find the appropriate architectural siding that we will use on the particular project. Yep, that's it.
So in conclusion to this presentation, staff finds that this application is consistent with the Ybor City Design Guidelines. There were additional bullet items that I spoke about on your staff report on page 3. He addressed those items that were outstanding from the prior public hearing. Also in your packet, there were 4 letters of opposition, and I included those. At the last public hearing, there was the public that spoke. I believe the applicant met with those, and through the last public hearing, a lot of their issues have been resolved. Just to briefly go through the area of Ybor, I touched upon this last time, and since this is a new public hearing, I'd like to touch upon it again. I spoke about the cladded metal structures that were accessory structures, and some were primary structures within the district of Ybor City. This is from 1929 as well. It's a little difficult to see exactly the structures in question, but I circled them. The Sanborn gives us a lot of information. The color coding, the yellow indicates that these are frame construction. The red indicates that this is brick veneer on the exterior, and then the blue is concrete block. The ones that are circled are cladded in metal, and that is indicated by gray. So they're wood structures that have the gray around it, and hopefully it's presented on your monitors in front of you. But I wanted to show that the reference that he is providing today has historic integrity to it. So throughout the district, they're speckled through. A lot of them are on the alleys. They were secondary structures, but there are some that face primary streets. 9th Avenue is one that is here. 8th Avenue that flanks primary street. So not all of these auxiliary buildings were in the background. This is a better example of how the condition is in the field today. This is provided by a neighbor. You see the surrounding fence here. These are some of the examples of the secondary structures that were cladded in metal. They're usually a corrugated metal with the body and the roof as well. This is one that was converted to a secondary structure within a parcel. This is one that dates back to, within the period of significance. You see the historic structure in the background, and then you see the secondary structure that was for storage. Another structure that has a lean-to added for additional square footage. Just another example. And then I'd like to conclude with one that has more of an industrial use, but not all of them were subordinate in size. This one has some massing to it. So that concludes this portion of the public hearing. I'm here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Now's the time for public comment, but seeing tumbleweeds in the back, we'll go ahead and skip that part. Let's ask questions. Commissioners, starting on my left, please.
Mr. Humbert, I believe Mr. Vilo had said that you had met with some of the public who had some concerns about the project from the last hearing. Is that true?
We addressed their concerns.
Interesting. All right. I have no further questions.
I have no questions.
It was requested that you present an updated site plan. Do you have that with you?
Yes.
And then while you put that up, the other question I had, there was public testimony at the last meeting regarding whether or not the sidewalk had been damaged by the installation of this storage container. I was just wondering if there's any additional information that you'd like to present.
No, like I said, I was there, physically there the day that they delivered the container. And based on where the damage is in relation to where the structure is, there's no way that our driver could have damaged that particular section of sidewalk. I'm not sure if you've ever seen one, but basically they just back it in, lay it down on some blocks, and it's basically pull straight out. And that particular damage is at least 20 to 30 feet away. There's no way for him to maneuver, in and out and around to drive over that piece of sidewalk. So I'm not debating its damage, but we did not damage it during that.
Okay, thank you.
That installation.
And then if you'll just, I guess we can go through the site plan there real quick. If there's are there any changes to it, or is this just an updated version?
No, it's just pretty much updated. The structure's here in the dark area.
Mm-hmm.
We've given all the offsets from the property line. We had the existing building height, the total site dimensions. Not much change from we met with staff before we finished finalizing this design to make sure we were meeting all standards. So,
And it doesn't, that particular site plan is basically what's there currently minus the aesthetic improvements?
minus the aesthetic improvement, correct.
Okay,
Correct.
thank you. And then, do you have any other questions?
No question.
Okay. Back to the section and the detail shows a horizontal application of the siding, and it looks like, is that the intent to be horizontal? Because all of the different historical references.
You mean this way for the siding?
Yes, sir. The references that Ron provided all had vertical orientations of that metal panel.
I guess it really doesn't matter. We based our design on the adjacent property, which has horizontal hardy board siding. So that was the concern originally, that we place it horizontal because the neighbor's adjacent property had horizontal siding. But we can turn it vertical. It's not an issue.
I think that's, and then you've adjusted the pitch of the roof to kind of more blend in with the neighbor. Both ends, the north end and presumably the south end of the gable would be enclosed.
Correct.
So that you don't see that, and then you're going to paint out the wood That's a wood, yeah, PT,
You-
2x4
the fascia?
Yeah. So
Yeah, that, yes, sir.
we'll see all that painted and just metal roofing.
Right.
goes along with it. Okay.
The only portion that will be a little tricky is the southern side, because that actually is a working door. So placing the siding behind the metal bars and all of the workings of that door will be a little tricky, but we'll do the best we can to enclose it.
Yeah, I would just, I understand that, and, because that's where you're gonna be accessing everything. I guess in terms of the gable end, you should probably enclose that so you don't have a whole bunch of
No,
pigeons.
correct, that will be
Yeah,
enclosed. That will be
roosting up there and,
Right.
and maybe paint that out or something, but that's something that I think you can handle with staff. Those are my questions. Thank you. Any rebuttal to what you've heard?
No.
Okay. We'll close the public hearing. Discussion?
As presented, it looks fine. I do agree that just in terms of the proportions and the precedent, that doing it vertically would be preferable to the horizontal.
With all the things that are going on in Ybor City, I think this is one of the last things we need to make a precedent of, because in all good conscience, I'm gonna have to be consistent. And when these things start popping up here and there, well, he did it, he did it. I have a problem being in favor of this. Looks okay, but there are further ramifications to that. That's my thought.
Yeah, from the previous month's hearing, I believe you addressed most of the public testimony's concerns over the container as well, and I do agree that the siding should be vertically oriented as well. But in terms of Mr. Schiller's comments, as Ron had pointed out, this was a mixed-use district as well, and I guess while we may not love these types of accessory structures, there is a historic precedent to that use in this district
Can
as
I
well.
talk about that?
Yes, please.
Until Malcolm McLean invented Sealand in 1973, there's no such thing as a shipping container.
Right.
So there may be a historic precedent, but it doesn't run deep, not to me. Yeah, I have a lot of heartburn about this.
Do you feel like it still looks like a shipping container once it's clad?
Right.
Yeah, I do, and the reason is because I know it's 8 feet by 8 feet by 40 feet.
Proportion,
Yeah.
true.
And if you look at 8 feet by 8 feet by 40 feet, it screams shipping container to me.
Yeah.
Particularly the way it sits behind the fence. You know, it's not disguised as a structure. It's not disguised as a structure that you would normally find there anywhere between 1880 and 1973. And I don't think it's a modern interpretation of that. That would be a stretch. I just see tremendous problems for us, and I don't really care about us. I mean, that's why we're here to argue these things and talk about them, but for the district and going further. Also, in our charge from Ron this morning, one of the things you gotta take into, can you reread the last sentence of the paragraph, Ron, please, that says what it is, the standards that we're supposed to use? Because I think the last sentence says something about, and the basis of the public comment. I wouldn't be thrilled if I were the people that wrote these letters. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I don't, but let me see if I can assist you. Give me a little more information?
When you were talking to us, you said you make a decision based on the Secretary of Interior, the architectural standards for Ybor City, this, that, and something regarding and the public comment was the last thing before the period.
Well, if you look at the staff report on page 3, it's the application of standards for the Ybor City Design Guidelines, and that's the criteria that you should follow for new construction. And it talks about height and width, talks about the facade width, talks about the setbacks, the spacing, the alignment, the forms and details and the building materials. And that's under new construction, page 51 through 54 of the Ybor City Design Guidelines. So in evaluating each application that comes forward, this is the criteria that you use. I understand that the shipping container, there was some dialogue that, I look at this is the bones of the building, and it could be frame construction, it could be block construction. So this is taking on that vernacular. I tried to express the different forms within the period of significance with the references that I used. I showed some smaller units that were there that were cladded in metal, and then the last one I showed was, it's more of an industrial warehouse type structure. So there's different forms within that vernacular of the metal cladding.
I'm not hearing it, but that's okay. That's okay.
Yeah. I appreciate the discussion though, because I'm seeing more and more shipping container being turned into homes within historic districts, or maybe not within the jurisdiction of historic districts. They certainly seem to be popping up, and eventually we'll probably see more of these within the district, and I guess it's up to the board and the guidelines to address, how we can do that in an appropriate manner that meets the guidelines.
I think that one of the things that we heard last time was that the public had a lot of different concerns, but they were on board with you making the improvements that had been suggested and that are now proposed, and hence I think that's why they're probably not here today, because they saw that you were on the track towards addressing their concerns. So I think the public, the neighbors' comments that are part of our record here have been satisfied. I think it's a great question as to whether or not a shipping container, this new kind of module that's going to appear all over the cities is something that we should reject in the district or try to figure out how to incorporate. I mean, this is a temporary structure by nature. I hope the applicant's company grows and is so enamored with Ybor that they buy the property and make a headquarters, and
Yes.
And that this thing evolves. And this is kind of a step. I think that these structures are kind of a step along the way towards making a company or making a city too. So I share your concerns about the proportionality of it and having to deal with it, but I think that it's something that you can't unring the bell on this type of container, and it's you see them on the streets. You see houses being made out of it. You see Sparkman Wharf. They're all over the place. They're new Legos in the city. So I'd be in favor of trying to figure out how to deal with it in a historic context than banning them from it. So those are my comments.
This reminds me a little bit of, there used to be a freestanding restroom facility right off of the railroad track and near the parking garage, and they took a similar conceptual approach. It was a temporary structure, and they kind of clad it, in a very simple manner, and it was temporary, and it seemed to fit in as such.
Okay, good discussion. We need a motion.
So I'll move to grant a certificate of appropriateness for the drawings and documents presented at this public hearing in BLC 19-64 for the property located at, 1604 East 4th Avenue. Wait, no, that's not right. 1602 East 4th Avenue. With the following conditions, because based upon the finding of fact, the proposed project is consistent with the Ybor City guidelines of the City of Tampa.
I'll second that, and just for the record, indicate that we have asked for the siding to be vertical, and for the south elevation, for the doors to be clad vertically in metal panels, and the gablet to be closed as well.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I would suggest that that be considered a suggested amendment to the maker of the motion, and I would ask the maker of the motion, do you accept that friendly amendment to your motion as a condition?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Before we proceed, I think that we had discussed that the siding be turned vertical, The north elevation would be full clad, and the south elevation would be clad above the doors because of the,
Our intent was to,
sorry, we're closed.
I heard that the intent was to clad the doors, or attempt to clad the doors as
Correct.
well, and that's why I
Okay.
made
Correct.
the amendment as such.
You're good with that?
but-
Yep.
You're good
Yeah,
with
I'm
that?
good with that.
Sure.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Does the agent understand the conditions of the approval?
yes, sir.
And you are accepting of them?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. So, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Thank you. And we're done.
That's the shortest meeting I've been in.